All right, it gives me a great pleasure to announce Adam T. to start the workshop.
My name's Adam. I'm an alcoholic. So I was asked to pick a couple of readings, and if you're new, that's the good news and the bad news, right? I've got the mind of a chronic alcoholic, which is a death sentence. It's a freaking death sentence. If I don't find a solution, and then they're talking about working with others. Just out of curiosity, how many people here are sponsoring? Maybe half? Good. So that's not a lot. I was in Atlanta a couple months ago, and I was in a meeting with 300 people, and they asked everybody in the group how many people were willing to sponsor at the end of this meeting. The whole room stood up. And I was electrified. I couldn't fucking believe it. I go, where I live in LA, 3 people out of 300 stand up. And I said to the secretary after the meeting, how is that possible? And he said to me, well, Sonny, he said, in our group, when a new guy comes into our group, the group will sponsor. 2 or 3 guys will sit with him, read him, the doctor's opinion, go through more about alcoholism, help him through his first 3 steps. A couple guys will sit with him and work with him through his 4th step. Then we'll take him out and knock on doors with him and make amends. Who said you got to do that alone, he said. Knock on doors with him and help him with his amends. And then we get him involved in H&I right away. And he said if they don't want to do it, we tell them to find another home group. Man, it was brutal, but I've never seen a more enthusiastic group of people in my life. And when we just read that part, I have to understand for me, and I didn't understand that the 12 steps are kind of like the face of a clock. In the face of the clock, when I'm in that 12 step, it's not linear, it's a circuit. And when I'm connected to 12, right next to me is 1, right? So now I'm going to re-experience that craving. Right? That phenomenon that happens even with narcotics. We were talking about this yesterday. I know there's a lot of NA guys here. We talk about coke, meth, and alcohol producing the phenomenon of craving upon ingestion. Opiates, nicotine produce it upon withdrawal. But it's still the same thing. Once I start, I can't stop, and I can't seem to stay stopped on my own. So I go through these ideas in that first step with a new guy. I help them to understand that coming to believe in a power other than myself. We're going to talk about this. I have to stop playing God. We're going to get to that piece today. I go through that 3rd step idea with him. The need to play God, the need to be right, the need to sort, the need to compare, the need to judge, the need to label. This thing that separates me. That's why unity is our first tradition, because I have a divisive mind. It's part of being human. I go through that 4-step inventory. A lot of times, and you'll see it in the second half of Bill's story, Ebby he helped him write his 4th step. At that time, it was an inventory. It wasn't called a 4th step, but the sponsor used to do the writing. I mean, giving some guy a pen and saying, call me when you're done, is not enough for a lot of us. Sometimes I have to sit with that and help him go through it. Go through this 5th step. Admission, acknowledgement, and acceptance of these chunks of truth about myself. So going through that was a really big piece for me. And what happens by doing that is the word intimacy is into me I see. I start to realize some of the things that he just read in working with others. And we'll get back to that, but one of the ways that our home group goes through the big book, and I was talking to another guy here, I go, your book's all highlighted up, and I said, there's 4 ideas: prayers, promises, warnings, and directions. And if you look at it, the book is pretty much constructed like that. So that if you go through it laterally, you'll see all of the warnings. You'll see all the promises. You'll see the directions. This is a textbook. It's not a novel about 2 guys in 1939. It is a clear-cut set of directions that will relieve me of the bondage of self, show me how to move away from that obsession, and also show me how to help others. That word intimacy, again, is into me I see. The most important 3 words in 12-step programs are yeah, me too. I don't have to establish all of this for you guys, but Harvard and Stanford both studied Alcoholics Anonymous. The conclusion and the results were the same. The 12-step program's results and success exceed all the other modalities combined. That's smart recovery. There's a whole bunch of different, against the stream, refuge recovery, all of those. They're all great. They work for a certain number of people. But Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, CMA, these direct derivatives. In the South, they're using a thing called DDA, Drug Addicts Anonymous, DAA. They use the big book. CA uses the big book. CMA uses the big book. So this is the foundation. This book right here is in the United States Library of Congress as one of the top 88 books, and all this stuff is footnoted. I've researched it. I'm going to show it to you. Is one of the top 88 books that shaped America. Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, and we're named after a book. In reality, Alcoholics Anonymous is probably the biggest book club in the world. Right? We read the book, we talk about the book, right? I mean, if you really think about it. But Alcoholics Anonymous has affected the lives of somewhere between 30 to 40 million people worldwide with all the sister and cousin programs. And you know why I don't think it's going to work for me? Because it wasn't my idea. So we talk about this. We're going to go through some of the fundamental building blocks today. Some of the ideas to get us to 10, 11, and 12. I was reading, and I have it somewhere. It's Bill Wilson's writing on emotional sobriety. And he uses this term, spiritual calculus. That's not what this is. There's just some fundamental ideas that if I can apply those ideas to my life, I can get free. Alcoholism really is the only prison where the key's inside. And I didn't understand it. I said it last night. Anybody heard the term Eskimo? Do you know where that story comes from? That story is about a priest and an atheist, right? And they're in a bar in Alaska in the middle of nowhere. And the priest says to the atheist, "Why don't you believe in God?" And the atheist said, I tried God once. And the priest says, "Well, what do you mean?" And he says, "Well, I was out in the middle of a blizzard, in the middle of the night. There was not a light. There was no one in sight. And I knew I was going to die. So I tried God. I got on my knees. I said, 'Okay, God, if there's a God, help me. I'm going to die.'" And the priest looks at me and says, "Well, you got to believe. You're here." He says, "You don't understand. What happened is as soon as I got off my knees, I bumped into this Eskimo and he showed me the way back into town." Welcome to the igloo. You're in the igloo today. And we're going to show each other a way back to a spiritual way of life. And part of the word spiritual is ritual. And some of the things that we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, these very simple actions, when applied to my life, will start to change my perception of reality. There was a theory back in the 70s called neuroplasticity. That theory was that the mapping of the brain could change through action and experience and knowledge. And they didn't believe it. So what they did in London is London's built on circles. It's not squares like here. And the taxi drivers had to study this map. They didn't have GPS. They're not even allowed to use GPS. They have to know all the city streets. They have to know. So what they did is they started photographing their brain. And then they would do this 6-month study, and they saw the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that does mapping and spatial logic, doubled in size. They know that our brains can change. So if you're like me, have a feeling, take an action, have a feeling, take an action, have a feeling, take an action. Next thing you know, I'm so far down the rabbit hole that I don't see any hope in coming back. And that's part of what addiction and alcoholism was. And what Alcoholics Anonymous is doing is it's superimposing a set of actions. Normal people are intellect over emotion. They think, they process, and they act, right? I'm exactly the opposite. I'm emotion over intellect. I act, process, and then think, oops, 10-step. Oh, come on, we're the only people that burn bridges ahead of us. You're laughing, you're relating. So this letter that was read, there's a guy named Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard and all these people are in the big book, okay? Carl Jung, that was on page 27. He's the doctor. He was a student of Sigmund Freud's. So William James, The Varieties of Religious Experiences, which you're going to see in this book. Sigmund Freud was he was the professor for William James and Sigmund Freud. So Carl Jung was a student of Sigmund Freud's, okay? And he says it. He says it. Roland Hazard was a trust fund baby, like a lot of people nowadays. And they have a house in Santa Barbara. If you ever Google it, the Hazard House, they had a house there. And if you walk outside the house in Santa Barbara, which is right here, you'll see this sundial. And the same sundial he built in Zurich for Sigmund Freud. But so Roland Hazard, he's the heir to Allied Chemical. He's a millionaire back in the like 20s. And he can't solve his alcohol problem, right? He's trying to throw money at it, like a lot of us. That's like treatment today. So he goes to this guy. He goes to Carl Jung to try to get help. He's exhausted every resource money can buy. So he sails over there. You have to do it like back then, we're doing air travel. And this is what Carl Jung said to him. He said, you got the mind of a chronic alcoholic. He says, I've never seen one single case recover. Have you guys not noticed? For a lot of us, this is a death sentence. It's a death sentence. And he says he felt like the gates of hell had slammed shut on him. And he said, are there no exceptions? It's like telling you got 4-stage cancer. We can't help you. Do you know what that would be like? To imagine having 4-stage cancer and know that you had weeks or months to live? And someone came up to you and said, man, you know what? I had what you have. This is what I did. What kind of respect would you have for that guy? You don't believe in life after death? If you're new, look around here. There's a bunch of people with 30, 40 years here. Those are the guys that said, we'll help you. They raised their hand to sponsor. You know, maybe they didn't have cancer. I don't know. But I have a fatal disease. So when he says that to Roland Hazard, he says, are there no exceptions? And he says occasionally, but he describes the first of 3 pieces that became Alcoholics Anonymous. The other 2 are Silkworth, which we're going to talk about today, the Oxford group, which we talked about last night, and this piece, which was the description of the spiritual experience. He talks about ideas, attitudes, and emotions, right? That are once the guiding force of people like us are suddenly cast to one side, and a new set of conceptions begins to dominate them. Now, Roland took that back to New York. He got drunk again, but then he met with Ebby Thatcher. So Jung told it to Roland. You can look this up. Roland told it to Ebby. Ebby told it to Bill. Ebby brought this to Bill. Ebby and Bill got loaded together. It's really funny because this guy right here, I'm 220 miles from home, and me and him got drunk in Mexico together. I got arrested 3 times in one day, not that time, and I kicked a border patrol officer in the chest. Ask him. I mean, that's just like one of 1,000 things that I get loaded. I don't have to prove it. I got witnesses here today. It's very rare. Like, people look at me and they go, oh, fuck, man, a lot. You know, he probably never got loaded. Right? So Carl Jung tells Roland. Roland tells Ebby. Ebby tells Bill. And Bill started to assemble this. If you go to Bedford Hills, which is, it's like this, it's just like this. It's out in the country. It's outside New York. And it's Bill and Lois with his wife. It's their country home. And there's this beautiful library in the house, and there's thousands of books. And you can look it up. I know some of you guys are taking notes. Steppingstones.org. Go through, if you care to do this, you'll go through the archives, and it'll show you all the books that are in that house. And they're listed by publishing date. So anything that was published prior to 1939 could have been information that Bill used. There's books on Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, psychology, abnormal psychology. There's just tons and tons of books. And you'll start to see a lot of how this was assembled. I know this is heresy. I know we want to throw the Lord's Prayer out of it. I'm just going to share it with you because if thy will be done, obviously the 3rd step. Lead us not into temptation, 6 and 7. Forgive us our trespasses, 8 and 9. How obvious can it be? 10 is the kingdom. Think about it. If you can't find The temple in your heart, you're not going to find your heart in a temple. You ain't going to find it in a $10 million mansion. If I don't solve the spiritual problem, 10 isn't going to work. The power, it's right there in 11. It's the words in there. The kingdom, the power, and the glory, where two or more are gathered, in this case, for the purpose of recovery. The therapeutic value of what? We know it. One addict working with another. I'm just going to break tradition. It's an all-inclusive idea. I talk in Narcotics Anonymous all the time. I don't use the S word. All right? And you know what that means. We use a certain language there. But the ideas are the same. The concepts are the same. Last night we were talking about if you have any problem with AA, read Bulletin 13. It's Narcotics Anonymous, Bulletin 13. Look it up. It's a 3-page document of Narcotics Anonymous' complete and absolute love and gratitude for Alcoholics Anonymous. Because as addicts, a lot of us also, I'm both, know that without the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd be in a pine box if I was lucky enough to actually get a piece of dirt. No one would have came to my funeral. You know, I was telling my buddy Mark here, we had 2 guys in my neighborhood die this week. And no one came. And my buddy just died, was 65 years sober. He was 99 years old. I got his picture here. And I should tell it. I got his picture in my thing. I mean, and he goes, I don't want a funeral, bro. I don't want my enemies gloating. He was like, what are these? Like, he goes, I don't want a funeral, right? Like 300 people showed up. I mean, it was amazing. And then you see what a life worth living looks like. You get to see what that looks like. If I want to get loaded, I'm going to die alone. If I want to be clean and sober, if I want this way of life, if you guys are here, when I said welcome to the Igloo, you don't have to do this alone. I'm telling you, we have something here that 100% works. I don't have to keep selling it. We already know it works. The evidence is the same. If you don't think that Alcoholics Anonymous has evidence-based results, and you're going to hear that a lot, go to a world convention. If you can get into Vancouver, right? You go to a world convention, you check out 90,000 alcoholics going to a world convention. And you can't do it with your insurance. You have to get a plane ticket, conference ticket, hotel room, right? Don't worry, it'll be here in 10 years. But the reality is, when you see 85, 90, when they do the out-of-towners, it takes 2.5 hours. It looks like the United Nations, every continent, every nation, right? Every country, every neighborhood is represented. And for every one of those people, there's a son, there's a dad, there's a mom, there's a sister, there's a world of people. And here's the language, even in NA, that have done what? Made the effort, right? If you want what we have, are willing to make the effort to get it. Very powerful. My sponsor said it. It doesn't matter who's wrong. It doesn't matter who's right. It just matters who's left. And again, we look at people here with 20, 30 years sober. And I'm not saying, people say time doesn't matter. I'm like, really? Get some. And that's not to be disrespectful. So what we do in my home group is we go through the book and we turn a lot of the statements into questions. So I want to start with a couple of the forwards. I'm going to go through some of this stuff because we can't get to this idea of spiritual calculus without a little bit of math, right? So one of the ways that I've got on the table over here some stuff that you guys, this is the circle and the triangle that came out of the 3rd edition because of copyright. So now the book just has Alcoholics Anonymous on the title page. The page before that's blank. And when I work with new people, you know what we say, you know why it's blank? Because that's everything you know about recovery. They try to get me to be a little humble coming into it. But what I do is I'll have you guys, if you want to photograph this later, if you're new and you got a clean book, and write it. So you're going to do a circle and a triangle. You're going to write recovery, unity, and service. And from that idea, there's 36 principles. This started with Aristotle. He said the function of the man is built in 3 parts. This is the human anatomy, the spiritual condition that we have. We have a mind, we have a body, and we have a spirit. So the mind is governed by reason according to Aristotle. Okay? The body is governed by desire. This was way back in like Greek times. And the spirit, right, is emotion. But later, like the biblical idea, right, the mind's function is to think, the body's function is to act, the spirit's action is will, and my will always choose me. It is my will that has to straighten out. I have to align my will. Like I said last night, when an alcoholic's not having a good day or an addict, it's because I'm not getting my way. It is an exertion of me needing to play God. And once I understand these ideas, so these three sides of the triangle are governed by 36 principles. So the steps are the mind, the traditions are the body. They show us how to live and conduct ourselves in harmony in a group. It's like this thing about the 6 blind guys trying to describe an elephant. So one guy thinks it's a wall, one guy thinks it's a tree, one guy feels the tail, right? Now, there's no way these 6 blind guys are ever going to understand the magnificence of this creature unless they can work out their differences, right? If I'm worried about the Rams and the Lions, or I'm worried about right and left and blue and red, I can't figure out what we're doing. We have to have a common solution. That's why unity, that's why these ideas all are showing me how to get away from divisiveness. Because my life as an addict or an alcoholic absolutely depends on that idea of, yeah, me too. I felt like that too. I have to continue to focus on the problem and the solution. And if I can understand those ideas, then the 12 traditions are going to apply to the group. I look at the 36 principles. The other 12 are the world concepts. They're very complicated. You can kind of see Bill's experience with law school, this idea of what we call corporate charters, which allow a company or an entity or a group or a church or the survival of the human race. Our survival as a human race depended on our unity. Right? You saw that? Like we say, oh, the newcomer's the most important person in the room. It's not true. And the reason it's not true is because if that newcomer becomes disruptive, you'll immediately see that the welfare of the group is more important. We have it in our format. It's like, you will be last to leave, but you're welcome to come back the next day. I mean, it's like, because the welfare of the group has to come first. So we're not talking about the traditions today. We're going to work our way to 10, 11, and 12. But if you're new, write this stuff down in your book. I'm leaving it up here. It's something that you can look at. On the back of this, when we go to the next page and we look at the table of contents, I've got that all here. You can also photograph that. So the way the table of contents would look is Bill's story, 0 to 23 is loss of control. It's the craving. 23 to 43, the obsession, right? Loss of choice. 43 to the end of 52 and 53, really, which is the end of we agnostics, you're going to see the loss of power, which is the second step. So I have that written in here. Physical craving, there is a solution. Mental obsession, more about alcoholism, the unmanageability, we agnostics, which is primarily step 2. Got it written down. If this isn't going to matter to you, if you think this is just something collectively that you're just going to listen to and walk away, I can't learn this unless I start to help others. And this is the thing. This right here is called the hierarchy of human learning. You may not be able to read it from here, but at the very top of it, and this was again another Harvard study on how people learn, right? The least effective way is lecture. Second least, reading. Third, audio visual. The very most effective way anybody learns anything is to teach. Why do you think all the grad students in universities come back and teach the undergrads? Because you reinforce what you've learned. The second way we learn effectively is by practice, right? Even professional athletes. Tiger Woods hits 1,000 balls a day, right? Show all these guys, they're practicing all day long. So here's the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not the result. Now, Narcotics Anonymous says as a result, but the result of these steps. We try to carry this message, right, to others. That's the teaching part. And practice. So what we're going to read next is if an alcoholic or an addict fails to enlarge and perfect. How do you perfect? By practice, right? If I fail to enlarge and perfect my spiritual life, right? Through self-sacrifice for others, what happens? I will not survive the certain low spots ahead. Right? Real simple idea. The difference between being in the program and on the program. It's like being in a submarine or on a submarine. When the ship takes a dive, you'll find out if you're in it or on it. And that's it. And what that means is I have to start to look at what happens when it hits the fan. You know, when you come home and your old lady says, we're done. Or you get that piece of paper that says your house is in default. Or your boss gives you that pink slip. Do I have a spiritual defense? Can I bring that back to my home group, to my sponsor, and say, I don't know what to do? And you know what? You're going to hear, oh, that happened to me. You might have a dark year, but you'll come out of it because we all came out of it. Right? But if I don't have that experience and I'm not able to ask for help, help is the dirtiest four-letter word in recovery. I'm a loner by nature. I don't know how to ask for help. That's no wonder I went through rehab 28 times. I'm too proud to ask for help. So we do this all the way through the table of contents. You can photograph it after. And then in the preface, the first thing that I highlight on that first page is this is a basic text. If you're new, it's not a novel. These are the things I'm talking about with a new guy. When I'm taking a new guy through the book, it's not a novel, it's a textbook, which is a workbook. All right? So, going forward to the next piece, and I'm going to read this because this is where you understand that this is all inclusive. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? This was in the beginning, are more than 100 men and women who have recovered. That's a promise. The word recover. And again, what do I recover from? I recover from the restlessness, the irritability, and the discontentment. My sponsor said, what do you want from AA? And I said, well, I want a yacht and a Lear jet. And you know what he said to me? He said, if you work steps 4 through 9 and you develop the discipline of 10, 11, and 12, what you'll get, because I'm a taker, he says, what you'll get is a quiet mind and a loving heart. And I'm like, what do I want that for? But think about the opposite of the quiet mind. It's a mind that won't shut up. It's a mind that's up at 3 in the morning telling me I'm a loser. Right? That job, they're going to fire me. It's telling me my old lady's with someone else while I'm up here. It's like it never stops. It's up 5 minutes before me every day. Right? And the opposite of a loving heart is a vindictive heart. It's a racist heart. It's a prejudiced heart. All of my life I was crucified between two thieves, yesterday and tomorrow. And yesterday I have guilt, shame, and remorse. And tomorrow I have fear, anxiety, and worry. The product of this, about being recovered, our spirits are like a body of water. When they're perfectly still, they best reflect the heavens. I know how to get there with a bag of dope and a drink. But unless I can develop that sense of comfort and ease, recovered through this process, an addict or an alcoholic like me will never stay here. You take drugs and alcohol away from me, you have to give me something better. That's what this talk's going to be about. So when he says, we are 100 men and women who have recovered from what? A seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Now here it is. To show other alcoholics precisely. Now if you're a craftsman, anybody build? If you build a house and it's a couple inches off its foundation, you get up 3 floors, nothing fits. The windows don't fit, the doors don't fit, there's no 90s. There precisely means exactly. There's not a lot of latitude for opinion in the word precisely. My sponsor said, you know, people say there's as many ways to work a program as there are people in it. He goes, why do you think there's a 95% failure rate? You don't want to be doing what they're doing. Get around to people that are doing this, that are doing exactly what it's asking me to do, and I will get exactly what it says I will get. Freedom from the bondage of self. A way to navigate around the drama. A way to have, there's a whole section on relationships that we're going to talk about today, where it's going to talk about how I conduct myself. That I should not create future harm. That I have to be careful to treat people the way I want to be treated. If I live by spiritual principles, right? When we get to we agnostics, we're going to talk about what that might look like. Because these spiritual principles are laws. right? They're laws. I mean, I understand inertia, velocity, centrifugal force, gravity. I had physics in college. I knew all the sciences. Why wouldn't there be spiritual laws? Pretty arrogant of me to think there wouldn't be, right? So that's where I have to start. That's going to be the starting point in that chapter. So it says here, how we have recovered precisely is the main purpose of this book. Now, don't forget, Jimmy K and all the old-timers in Narcotics Anonymous got clean with this book. Okay, until Narcotics Anonymous came out with the basic text, the how and why, the flat book, and so forth, this was it. And the fundamentals in this book are actually the right translation. There's no women here, so I'm going to say it. I either want to kill it, F it, or eat it. Kill it is resentment, F it is sex, eat it is fear. Look at it. These are the instincts that drive the species. It's driven by greed, by selfishness. And it's asking me to recover from that idea. These are fundamental ideas. They're directly addressed here. So it says, we hope these pages will prove so convincing, right? They're going to convince me that no further authentication. In other words, they don't need any of that. He believed after studying this, and I don't care what people say, Bill only had a certain number of years sober. This was also edited by another 100 people. You know, you got doctors and lawyers and dentists and people that are, trial attorneys that have 2 years sober and dismiss that they know nothing because they got a couple years sober. That's foolishness. Some great minds were behind this. And you see it, people like Carl Jung. You see it, a lot of people that actually contributed to this were very well read. Back in those days, they didn't have YouTube. They actually had to read stuff. So it said, we think this account of our experience will help everyone, okay? Look how inclusive that is. When he says everyone, he's not just talking about us. He's talking about the families of us. This is a systemic family disease. We start talking about Naranon and Koanon and Al-Anon. You're talking about things like enabling. You're talking about boundaries. You're talking about language like codependency. That was not around in 1939. They didn't use that language. Okay, but we look at these ideas, like from the Al-Anon point, I didn't cause your addiction, I can't control your addiction, I can't cure it, and I won't contribute to it. But I will contribute to your recovery. Right? Because a lot of times the enabler, here's some dark humor. The difference between a codependent and a toilet seat, the toilet seat doesn't follow you around after you poop all over it. If you're relating, you might have a little issue. I love dope fiend women, man. Still, I gotta be careful with that. Careful with it, right? I can't. I know you're recording this, so I can't say it. But I heard this comedian. He goes, "You know why we like newcomers?" I go, "Why?" He goes, "Because they're easy. You go out with a girl for 5 years and you want to do something nasty. She's like, I think I got to call my sponsor first." Come on, man. See. But if my behavior in relationships continues to harm others, it says I'm sure to drink. I cannot, if I'm not sorry, if I don't understand what the word repentance means, you will get a conscience here. So I'm going to finish with this and we're going to keep moving forward. Think everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend the alcoholic and addict and people like us, the families that we come from. My mom was definitely sick spiritually. One day it's like, I hope you die in a fiery plane crash, and the next day it's like, son, what do you want for breakfast? I'm like, that it took me a while to understand that she didn't mean it. She didn't know any better. We talked about it yesterday. If you don't heal what hurt you, you're going to bleed on people that didn't cut you. That idea is obvious. The other one is expecting life to treat me fairly is like expecting a bull not to charge me because I'm a vegetarian. Life isn't fair. It says this is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living, I'd circle it. I highlighted precisely how we recovered. I circled our way of living has its advantages for who? All. And for me, I was a nicotine addict, quit smoking after, a year and a half sober. I can work with them. I can work with addicts. I can work with alcoholics. I can work with families of alcoholics because the spiritual malady is the same. And we get to that part of the book, which will come really fast today because we only have 4 sessions. We're going to be able to talk about what that looks like. What does untreated alcoholism look like? Because if I don't understand, again, what the problem is, the solution's not going to work. And the reality is, the problem for a lot of people is alcohol. A lot of the guys I got loaded with, they stopped drinking, and you know what? It's amazing. Everything works for them. They fit in. They're part of. The career welcomes them back. They come to meetings once a year, take another anniversary cake. They never work a step, and their life gets better. I mean, they've been serene since their ass hit the seat in AA. That's not my experience. My experience, every time I stop getting loaded, the first thing they say is, you really need to be on medication, bro. Why are you so angry? Why are you so emotional? Why can't you sit still back there? What's wrong with you? And I'm crying at dog food commercials. So for me, I have a whole nother set of problems that are outlined on page 52, which are the bedevilments. And we're going to read through it again in a minute, but what that is for me is when I stop getting loaded, right, the outsides get better, and like I said last night, the insides get worse. And when I'm not getting loaded, I'm not drinking, I'm still a prey to misery and depression. Ask yourself these questions. When you're not drinking, are you still a prey to misery and depression? When you're not drinking, are you still having trouble controlling your emotions? When you're, or me, I'm not drinking, am I still having trouble with my personal relationships? Hello? When I'm not drinking, am I still full of fear? When I'm not drinking, am I still basically unhappy? And the way that plays out in the real world for me is I don't fit in, I'm not part of, you don't understand me, no one loves me, everyone's in my way, they're not paying me enough, for God's sake, she's cheating on me, I gotta drink. And as soon as I pick up a cocktail, it's magical. I intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle me. Couple more drinks, fear of people in economic insecurity leave me, I'm buying the whole bar drinks. Hell, I'll write you a check, right? Give me a couple of Vicodin, I can comprehend the word serenity and I know peace. Give me a little cocaine, I want to start a business with you. Now, if you're laughing, there's something really wrong with you guys. That shit doesn't happen in the normal or temperate drinker, right? Alcohol is classified, like I said last night, as a depressant. And there's a relationship between God and alcohol, God and drugs. You know what it is? If you get into the ghettos of this country where there's nothing left, there's only 2 things you'll always see. Churches and liquor stores. You know why? Because they both give man hope. And like I said last night, hope doesn't matter to me until I'm hopeless. And I'm living in a town where guys are dying with $200-300 million. Crypto people, right? And they're sitting in meetings going, my daddy only left me 3 apartment buildings. I'm going to kill myself. I'm like, dude, I just put $40 in my tank to come talk to your ass. And I know, right? Because I'm paying all this stuff. It's like it's all going. But I got hope. That poor sucker with the $50,000 Rolex, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having money, but he's got no hope. He's got everything the world can offer. He's got the yacht, he's got the motorcycles, he's got the, wife that's 30 years younger than him, but all of it comes with trouble. He's got no hope. Alcoholics Anonymous is all about hope. This second step is all about hope. Seeing a guy come here the day before he died, a guy who was walking up and down the street, dying of alcoholism, and to meet with that guy, like I said last night, and watch the light go on, watch him suddenly become hopeful. It's infectious that maybe he don't have to live in that tent. I was at a meeting a couple nights ago, these guys are taking, 2 guys took a 5 and a 10-year cake, and they'd both been living in tents. And they were bragging. They go, I really thought I was a badass in a tent because I had a 1-bedroom tent with a coffee table, a refrigerator under the fridge. And I'm like, It was ridiculous. And the guy's sitting there with 5 years. He's got a job, at the port. So he's making $85 an hour. And he's got a beautiful girl, but he appreciates everything he's got. He appreciates everything he has. And the reason he appreciates it is because he's working with others. Not because he had that shitty life before. Because as soon as I start getting good shit, it becomes my norm, and then I want more stuff. And if you're new here, never compare yourself to other people if you're new. Compare yourself to you when you walked into recovery. If I look at that, right, that day before I walked in, how broken, how hopeless I was. And I had all the dope. I had everything I wanted that way, but I had no life. I had no friends. I had no connection. I was so empty. And when I remember that, it always makes me grateful. Gratitude is a very important thing. So we go through this, and like I said, this could be a 10-day workshop, right? We're not going to do that. What we're going to do, I'd like to do, is just a couple other things really quick. There's a top of the next forward on the 2 pages in, because we all have different editions. It says it also indicated strenuous work. One alcoholic with another was vital to permanent recovery. If you're new, highlight that. If you don't highlight it now, get the tape and do it later. But that is critical. That is the key piece. That if I can't work with new people and share this hope with them, for some reason, this doesn't work. My friend said it's like a cliff at your heels. Everywhere you go, the cliff will follow you. Now, just like in pain management, you stay ahead of the pain. In Alcoholics Anonymous, in NA, we stay ahead of the emotional pain. We have a systematic approach to a spiritual experience that keeps me far enough in front of this that I stay in a position or a posture of gratitude. If I can do that, I won't get loaded again. Plus, I'm so busy doing shit like this and working with people, even without this talk, which is it's not an ego thing. I'm so humbled that I get to come here. But at the end of the day, it's me meeting some guy 90 minutes before my home group, sitting with this book. That's exactly how I ended up here. By sitting with guys, going back into treatment, going back into H&I panels, sitting with guys and doing this. Doing anger management workshops in the 4-step, which we're going to look at today, because this is probably the greatest anger management tool you will ever encounter right here. What we talk about in the resentment inventory, in the fear inventory. That stuff unraveled it and showed me how to get free of it. Showed me how to get to a place of forgiveness. To realize that there are a lot of really sick people in this world. And they're sick because their dad was sick, or their grandpa, or their grandma. And this sickness perpetuates. This thing here, I was at a Native American First Nations conference, and we were, they do the sweat lodge, and all the chiefs are in AA. It's crazy. They're now they're trying to give all the First Nations kids fentanyl or Subutex or Suboxone, and the chiefs aren't having it. But we were talking about how, a lot of us in their culture, we're the product of 14 generations of dysfunction. Everything, the way we iron our clothes, the way we do our washing, but also the way we treat our kids, the way we treat our elders, the way we talk to each other. If I talk to my woman or she talked to me, if I talked to my best friend that way, I wouldn't have friends. But see how we've developed this and we're not conscious of it. And what can happen here through this process is generations of dysfunction can be healed today. So, what I wanted to do, we had talked about possibly taking and I know no one wants to ask a question because no one wants to look bad, right? But if there are any questions, it will fuel this thing a little bit so we can redirect it. If no one's going to ask a couple of questions, maybe we'll write them down and then we'll anonymously and we'll look at them as we go through this. But we're going to split these 2 sessions into 4 parts so you guys can step out, vape, talk, and then come back. So at this point, are there any questions at all up to right now? And we haven't even started, but this was just a good foundation.
Yep.
How you doing?
Hi, Alan. What was the thing that you said that we should underline?
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but
Indicated strenuous work, one alcoholic, with everything I mentioned I would underline. The word recovered, precisely how we have recovered, our way of living, these are all the things that I've got written down. Basic text is underlined, spiritual experience is underlined. That's so far, plus the table of contents, plus the circle and triangle. That's just the beginning of the foundation. Okay? So we'll get to that. I'll help you personally with it. In the blue. Prayers, promises, warnings, and directions. And I'll leave my book up here. You guys can take pictures of it. There's a couple guys here, I don't know where they are, that knew my original sponsor at Home Group, and we're all doing the same thing. You go around the world, and also write this down, bigbooknotes.org. bigbooknotes.org. There's about 100 books all the way back from the beginning that this guy photographed every page, and then he set it up on a website like where you could go to page like 30, more about alcoholism, and you could click book 1, book 2, book 3, and it's got all their notes in it. And you see, I mean, these are all probably, a lot of these guys are dead, but you see the fucking hope, man. These are a lot of these guys, you know, they came off Skid Row, and someone showed them a way out. And when they go through the book, you see the hope, man, the hope that these people have. Bigbooknotes.org. Okay? Go ahead.
You mentioned on the 3 dimensions, I got it, mind, reasoning, body, desire,
And spirit.
And spirit, emotion. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Habla español, ¿no?
Sí.
Yo tengo este libro y tengo esto también en puro español. No tengo aquí, pero dame su número.
Okay.
I'll help you with it because it's better. You'll get it that way. How you doing, bro?
Just to follow up with that, you said, so the mind thinks the body
More
what? The
confusing.
spirit acts.
Say it again.
The mind thinks the body what? The spirit acts.
The function of the mind is to think. The body of the function of the body is to act. The function of the spirit is will. And my will always choose me. It is my will against God's will that causes all the trouble. This is like the story of the prodigal son. Right? I can't probably say that here. So we'll do it later, but it's a good demonstration of why man always deviates from God. And why we come back when we get really hurt. Right? There's only things we can cry for when we're on our deathbed. Mommy and God, right? Yeah. Because we know. Right? The sheep recognizes the shepherd's voice. Go ahead.
So, we hear Oxford Group, we hear Abby, some of the guys that didn't stay sober. In your opinion, how important is it to go back and learn more of the history that isn't in the big book?
Absolutely. That's when my sponsor died when I had 18 years. He died of cancer, and he's a great guy. And I was lost for like about a year. And I got these two guys. One was a school teacher and another guy that were both historians. And I was fascinated by it. There was a guy named Hank Parkhurst who was actually the writer of the chapter of the employers, and he also helped write the book. Abby was pissed. He thought he should have been the co-founder. Hank was pissed because he thought he got ripped off by Bill because Hank helped him write the whole thing. There's a thing called the honor dealers. You can look all these names up, and I think that's why Bill was depressed, because this is the theory that when Bill took the book and he went to the U.S. Library of Congress, he didn't have Hank included in it, and it broke Hank's heart, and it was his very best friend. So Hank and Ruth and Bill and Lois got drunk together as kids. They were kids, and then he went off and fought in World War I, and there's all these letters. He was only 19 fighting in World War I. World War I was gruesome. My grandpa fought in World War I. And, you hear the stories because, it was like he was sending these letters to Lois at 19 saying, I got to stop drinking. He already knew. Like a lot of us. I started drinking when I was a little kid. 19, I was a full-blown dope fiend and a drunk, pissing in my pants. I already knew. My life was over. And so you read this history and you get to know who these people are, and it's very interesting. So I'll show you. There's a thing called silkworth.net. That's a great website, and there's all kinds of other stuff on that. There's a guy named Jay Stinnett who is he does a retreat that's just about the history of AA. There's also the new book called The Writing of the Big Book, which you guys probably know about, Bill Schauberg. But, you know, I have opinions about him too. You know, I don't think that he really loved Bill the way we do. You know what I mean? I fucking love it. Bill Wilson was like, if it was, I don't care what people say. He liked women and he liked money. Come on. All conquerors chase women and steal gold. I mean, if you didn't do that shit, I couldn't respect you. Come on. I couldn't respect you if the guy wasn't like that. We take this shit apart. You know, there's a lot of stuff. Like Bill experimented. They talk about LSD. That was done at the Veterans Administration Medical Center in West Los Angeles in a hospital with a physician. He was not sitting under a table with Timothy Leary on with a tie-dye t-shirt. We have to know the facts. He felt at that time that this study was to open the subconscious mind, because there's a partition with alcoholics between the conscious and subconscious mind. That's why we lie to ourselves. The way you learn your story is by telling it. Anybody else, or we're going to break? One more. Yeah, the Aristotle said the mind's function is reason. And then the body is desire. We all know that, right? Yes. And then, yeah, and other people's bodies. And come on, man. And then the third piece is emotion, which is the spirit, but it's actually will. I want to be God. What do they say? Would you rather rule in hell or serve in heaven? Shit. Fucking devil's got me. Boss universal. All right, let's take a break. All right.